The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with a review of the player cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. This time around, we're taking a look at the Seeker/Rogue multi-class cards. There are 4 of them: Pocket Telescope, Eon Chart Level 1, Eon Chart Level 4, and Beauregard. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Just a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto-Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or are good in one particular investigator get a Blessed token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the optional list of taboos or that are just bad for the game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these reviews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty for the art that graces the channel, Nicole Fiscus for the new Whisper in Darkness logo, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the intro as well as the overlays. Thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. We are back with our review of the player cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. We are making our way through the multi-class cards. This time we are going to take a look at the Seeker/Rogue multi-class cards. Starting off with Pocket Telescope. It's a 2-cost asset that has an intellect, skill icon, item, and tool traits. As a free triggered ability, you can exhaust Pocket Telescope, look at the revealed side of a connecting unrevealed location. As an action, you may investigate a revealed connecting location as if you were there. And Pocket Telescope takes up a hand slot. Thoughts about this card?
I think initially I was a little cold to this card. It doesn't help you investigate. It does, however, let you investigate at locations you may not want to be at, per se. Say if there's like an enemy at that location, or you're playing barricade or something like that, so you can stay in your barricade and investigate a connecting location. This is also nice in scenarios with either random locations or if you're playing a campaign for your first time. Being able to look at connections and see if there's any nasty effects that happen when you enter them can be nice to plan around, so that can be a nice advantage to this card. But comparing it to something like Magnifying Glass and Seeker, it's like +1 to investigate, it's fast, it costs 1 resource. It's difficult to evaluate how much value you can get out of the card, but if you're using the ability to be able to investigate locations you're not at, then that's pretty good. Obviously, Monterey Jack comes to mind because he wants to actively move around the map, so maybe he intentionally moves, use the telescope to investigate the location behind him so he can activate his ability.
Yeah, I've seen this thing in action. It's actually not bad. So often enough, you'll see a bunch of locations that require X amount of clues to even flip it over and go to it. It's nice to know what you're getting into. And as you said, Nate, there's a decent amount of scenarios that have punishing effects or randomized locations sometimes with punishing effects. Perfect example is Essex County Express. You got randomized train cars and you don't know what the bad thing is going to be. So it's a free action to look, just to look ahead at, what's coming up in the next train car. So if you find a train car that's going to spawn a monster on you, it's nice to know about that before you go in. And as a free action, that's pretty good. The second bit, so what that's for is if you can save yourself some move actions by doing that, then that's pretty great. This especially comes up, it actually comes up quite a bit in multiplayer, where the investigators are going around and they're splitting up a little bit, and then somebody's revealed a location, and then the Seeker's like, you know what, why don't I just investigate from here, and then that saves me a move action from having to go in and another move action from having to come back out, and then that's when you're getting value out of the telescope. I can see how in solo this is it's very difficult to get value out of this in solo, but I think in multiplayer it's pretty easy to do. Also, getting around baddies with investigates is useful because that saves you from having to move in, saves you having to take evade actions, saves you having to take more evade actions, as you're clearing out that location. So I think this card's not bad. It's appropriately costed. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as a solo player, primarily, this card has really left me kind of cold. I do appreciate the free triggered ability a lot. It is nice to know what's coming. I think you make a good point, Matt, that I think Essex County Express is one where this card really shines. Not only to know, what the next train car is, but especially if you need to prepare to discard or cards with certain sets of icons. That can, if you're racing that scenario, that can get pretty punishing if you just plow headlong into a bunch of those and end up taking way too much damage. Knowing which set of icons you need in order to proceed is pretty nice. I've seen horror and high gear mentioned, stuff like that. You've got a scenario like Devil Reef from the previous campaign, where you've got a bunch of sort of randomly designated locations, being able to know, okay, which is the one I need to go to and which can I ignore. That's awfully nice. I do like that this is a rogue card for that respect, because you can play adaptable. You can pick up adaptable early and then pick up Pocket Telescope before those scenarios. It's like, okay, I'm going to play Essex County, pop Pocket Telescope into my deck. After I'm done, take it out. Very easy to do without too much problem. The second ability really is tough in solo, because typically in solo you need to go to the locations. Investigating revealed locations from afar doesn't happen all that often. It can be useful if you're on the run from something, but I find you tend to have to go to most of the locations anyway, so investigating from afar isn't really an option. And I don't really like the fact that this is an investigate. The investigate action basically prevents you from using other investigate actions, say on Flashlight from the core set. So you're just investigating. You don't get any bonuses. You don't get to use any of your other fancy tricks to investigate. So if you're playing a Seeker with very high intellect, that's probably less of a problem. If you're playing a rogue who's going to rely on their lockpicks to investigate, Pocket Telescope is nowhere near as good as lockpicks, and most rogues don't have high intellect, so you're back to investigating with a 3. I would probably prefer to spend the move action to move into the location. Know for sure that I'm going to probably nail the investigate skill test with lockpicks and then move away. So yeah, this one doesn't really appeal to me as a solo player, but I can certainly see its use. How would we rate this one?
I'm going to give it a 0. I know we've given a lot of zeros today, but this one feels like a 0. I do think there are some investigators that can make pretty good use of this card. A couple investigators that came to mind while you were talking, Man from Lane, was Ursula and Luke. Ursula can use the investigate action after she moves, so she can move to a location. Maybe there's like 2 clues on that location, so you move in, you grab one turn, and then the next turn you move to the next location, use the Pocket Telescope to grab that clue from that other location, and then you continue on. And then Luke can do Luke things. He has his gate box. He can go anywhere. Any location is revealed to him, so those are fun. But yeah, if you're looking for an effect like Magnifying Glass, then just play Magnifying Glass.
Yeah, the power in this one is saving move actions, and the scouting. It's nice that it's a free action. It feels appropriately costed, and it's a good 0. I'm rating it a 0 as well.
This one doesn't appeal to me as a solo player, but I'm going to rate it a 0 because I do appreciate it's good if you're playing in multiplayer. I should mention the other issue in solo, of course, is that this takes up a hand slot, which if you're playing solo, you probably have your flashlight in one hand and a weapon in the other, and this one just isn't going to knock out either of those things. But if you're in multiplayer and you've got some other people at the table who can help you out with fighting and revealing locations that you want to use, that's pretty good. I do think there is one scenario that came to mind when looking at this, and that was before the Black Throne, where I was playing that with Harvey, and so Harvey, you can race to a different location and then investigate the location you just left behind. So you can be a little bit faster in that scenario, and time is of the essence in that one, so something like this would be quite useful in scenarios like that. That brings us to Eon Chart. It is a 2-cost asset that costs 1 experience point. Intellect and Agility skill icons, item, and relic trait. Uses 3 secrets as a free triggered ability during your turn. Exhaust Eon Chart and spend 1 secret. Choose and take one of the following actions: move, evade, or investigate. Eon Chart takes up an accessory slot. So this one gives you at least 3 actions. There are plenty of ways in the game now to add additional secrets to this, should you wish to do so. Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, this card gets even more ridiculous when you have ways of either adding secrets or recurring it over and over again with something like scavenging, and you're just getting free actions. It essentially turns into a 2-cost Leo DeLuca that doesn't have soak, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, the first comparison that came to my mind was Swift Reflexes from, I think it was Dream Eaters, which costs 2 resources, is fast, and gives you an extra action. This is 1 experience and gives you 3 extra actions. Or if you consider Ace in the Hole, that gives you 3 extra actions. And that costs 6 experience, and you can only have 1 in your deck. Which is pretty silly, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does seem very low-costed for what it does. That being said, I mean, Leo DeLuca existing means that, like, this kind of effect exists, and I think especially in Rogues, like, oh man, that accessory slot is very contested in Rogues.
Yeah, but this is really good, though.
Yeah, because what makes extra actions better? More extra actions to have even bigger turns than things, because things start. It's my experience that in a game that pressures you to do more than 3 actions worth of effort in 1 turn, the easiest way to tackle that is to give yourself 5 or 6 actions and just crush that pressure. And I think Eon Chart really feeds into that, stacking extra actions on top of other extra actions.
Plus,
yeah, this is a tough one.
Plus, if you're playing Cigarette Case in the hopes of drawing cards, this gives you extra actions to deal with things you needed to deal with anyway. So now you have spare actions to draw cards.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, it frees you up to just to take the draw action. Yeah.
Now, we had a discussion before we decided to review this card about whether these actions provoke attacks of opportunity. And I think the jury's still out on that one. Typically, free triggered abilities do not provoke attacks of opportunity, but the wording on this card suggests that it might. So we're not sure about that one.
Hopefully we'll get an FAQ about this one. Yeah, because this one's kind of weird. Because most times, like, lightning bolts, don't trigger AOs, but then this one's the way it's worded. It's like choose and take one of the following actions. And we know from the FAQ that Ursula Downs and her ability, when you get a free investigate with Ursula, you don't spend any actions of any of your 3 actions, but you're still taking an investigate action, which provokes AOs. Really strange. I hope they clear this up.
I mean, I'm operating under the assumption that it does provoke attacks of opportunity, and even still, you get an action to evade.
Yeah, there you go, free evades.
You can just evade for free, essentially, with this card. And it's at worst, you're getting 3 extra actions for 2 resources, which is good. If you get it down early, it's good. If you get it down in the mid-game, it's good. If you get it down late, it's good. That's awesome. Yeah. Whereas something like Lucky Cigarette Case, you need it early, and if you draw it late, then you just don't have enough time to get value out of it.
How would you feel, Nate, if it was just moves and evades?
It'd still be pretty good.
Yeah, because I noticed that in the past couple of cycles, the designers have been giving us a lot of bonus moves and bonus evades. Safeguard comes to mind. Track shoes.
I mean, if it just had move and evade, it's essentially just a Pathfinder that takes a slot.
Yeah, that's true.
With uses.
Oh my gosh, that's right. And Pathfinder's 1 XP as well. Oh my gosh. Well, as printed, it's 1 XP. Yikes. That's probably why this thing costs 2, because Pathfinder costs 3.
And this has more flexibility than Pathfinder, in my opinion, because you can be engaged with enemies. So say you need to move before you evade for some odd reason, like you have field work and you need that extra +2 or something like that, you can do that. And it's recurrable, whereas Pathfinder is much more difficult to be recurable. Yeah, granted, it's you don't need it to be, but yeah, I don't know. I don't like this card.
I think there's a larger issue that I've noticed about this game is in the past couple of cycles, especially in the Dream Eaters, this started, was giving out more and more extra action abilities. Safeguard's the perfect example. of like something like we're going to give you extra things to happen on your turn. We're going to make your turns longer, and we're going to give you cards that let you accomplish more things on your turn and take more tests, and it kind of breaks the 3-action economy that Arc kind of is centered around.
Yeah, and then consider like Seekers have access to Ariadne's Twine, so now you're turning resources into actions, and that's just silly.
Yeah, but at the same time, like the game in Leo DeLuca has that. You know, it's not something that the game is unused to. You know, spending money, spending that much money to get extra actions all game. Yeah, I'm not sure about this one.
So how would we rate this one?
I'm like really tempted to give this thing a curse token. I really don't like this card. I just find it's just a huge benefit for basically no cost, and I just don't like cards like that. And this is just one of those cards for me that's like really hard to not want to play in the investigators that can take it, because it's extra actions. Like, at what point in the game are you not going to need to move, evade, or investigate? Probably never.
Yeah, it's
like
kind of true.
Yeah, you know, like I think barring turn 1, there is like maybe 3% of moves that don't involve one of these 3 actions at some point during your turn.
Oh, I gotcha.
So are you going to give it a curse token, or are you going to...
I'm going to defer my judgment to Matt for now, and then I'll come back to my rating.
Ooh, I see what you're doing here. You're tossing the hot potato over to me.
I am.
So this one, I think when it comes to like the words on the paper, it's a +1. However, I'm like, my brain wants to compare this to like some incredibly broken cards. You know, like this is like in the same class, like as things like, because it kind of does similar effects as Pathfinder and Pendant of the Queen in particular, giving you free things, you know, free extra things to do and making your turns longer and giving you lots of free stuff for very low cost. So I think when it comes to like the direction of the game, I'm giving this a curse.
Okay.
I did it, Nate. I pulled the trigger. I did it.
Yeah. I just like, it's just too easy to get so much value out of. And like comparing this to Ace in the Hole is just okay. Like, sure, they're spread out over 3 turns, but that's arguably sometimes better than having a burst of 3 actions. Like, sometimes it's just better to spread those 3 actions out over 3 turns, because maybe you need to investigate, move 1 turn. Whereas, like, if you had just spent 6 actions in that 1 turn, now all of a sudden you're just kind of not wasting those 2 actions, but you're probably just taking draw or resource actions at that point. So yeah, this card's getting a curse token for me.
I think if we're looking at something like Ace in the Hole, I mean, Ace in the Hole did receive a taboo to prevent it from being recurred. Am I correct?
That's right.
So
yeah, it can't be recurred, and it can only be used once per round.
So I feel like if we are making that comparison, then this thing can be recurred because it's an item. Which is a bit of an issue. This is a Seeker and Rogue card, so they are not typically classes associated with rampant recursion, but we do have cards like Versatile. We do have cards like Versatile that let you purchase scavenging. We do have cards like Professor Webb in this set that is a Seeker card that lets you recur items. So while the bar to recur items might have been very high in these classes previously, I feel as though that bar is much, much lower these days. So the fact that you can just, if you get this set up and you can just start looping it, man, you know.
That's when the 2 cost becomes problematic.
And the other issue, too, is that it's in the class that has all the card draw. Like, you have Ellie to go find this thing for you. Now Ellie all of a sudden is taking extra actions. And while Seekers don't have a lot of recursion, they have Twine, they have Enraptured, they have Truth from Fiction. They have ways to just put more secrets on this thing.
Yeah, I think that's problematic. Between you have ways of recurring this card if you can at least get it into your discard pile, which isn't that difficult. A lot of the time you can just overwrite it and throw some cheap asset in there, and then all of a sudden you get this thing back and away you go. And then with all the secret tech that's now available, Yeah, I'm gonna give. I haven't played with this one, but I'm gonna give it a curse token as well. It just seems way too easy to abuse this thing, and it's giving you 3 actions, and then who knows, more secrets. There's every secret you put on this thing is an extra action, and if you draw this thing early enough, you're gonna get really good value out of it, especially if you can loop it. And then even if you draw it late, you know, as long as you can take those 3 actions, it's gonna do work for you. So this one's getting a curse token from us, and if you thought this one was ridiculous, we've got the other version for you. This is Aeon Chart level 4, 2-cost asset again with intellect, agility, and wild skill icons, item, and relic trait. Has 3 secrets. As a free triggered ability, during your turn, exhaust Aeon Chart and spend 1 secret. Choose to take 2 of the following actions in any order. Move, evade, or investigate takes up an accessory slot. So if you thought you could abuse the level 1 version of Aeon Chart, just wait till you get your hands on the level 2 version and you have at least 6 actions on
So
the
here's a
table.
question. So this one I think is like pretty broken because the game has very few effects that give you more than 1 action. Like we have police badge, and you could do it once with police badge. So hey Nate, imagine if they released a level 4 Leo DeLuca that gave you 2 additional actions every turn. Just imagine.
That card be
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it cost 5, you know, and took up an ally slot, it would still be pretty crazy. Yeah, it's like, man, I wish rogues could get something like that. Well, wait, they just did. Never
Yeah,
mind.
they literally just did.
Okay, that complaint doesn't work anymore. Yeah, but it's one of those things that's like, because it has the seeker on it, like it has, then all of a sudden it has to be crazy.
And it's like, it's annoying because Seekers are way better at using this card than Rogues are, I think, by and large.
Oh yeah.
Seekers are better at investigating, and they're almost always just as good at evading a lot of the time, just because they probably have things like Mind Over Matter, and they have tons of card draw, so yeah, it's just ridiculous. And this thing has this thing has really good icons. Why does this thing also have really good icons on it? So it's like now that recursion strategy just becomes that much better because now you can pitch it to a skill test. Now you can have one in play, investigate, pitch the second one, successfully investigate, scavenge the other one up, and oh look, I'm playing Relic Hunter all of a sudden. Now I'm playing 2 of these because it's not unique.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Yeah.
I'm taking like 7 or 8 actions a turn, and it's like, hold on.
It's just like...
So I'm gonna go. Can you go get me something to drink while I take my turn for the next 5 minutes?
Isn't that what Seekers are supposed to be like? Like you take a turn, everyone goes get beer, and then when they come back, you're supposed to be done. Is that how Seekers work?
Yeah, I hate it.
Okay.
Does this Man from Lane, does this qualify as busted?
I do get to bring out the busted graphic, which is nice. I haven't used the busted graphic in several videos. This one is actually one of those cards where, you know, typically Seekers, you know, if you're playing the Clover, you go to a location, you grab all the clues, you move to the next location. This is one of those cards where I might actually consider going investigate, move, and just go down the line and then make my way back up the line. So you're always getting that extra move and or investigate if you're, you know, being silly and playing 2 of these things. And
well, you know what?
You're looking for ways to burn actions.
So you know what it synergizes with? Because you take an investigate action, you can use the pocket telescope.
Exactly. So it's like I investigate, I move, I use the pocket telescope to investigate, I use this to investigate and move and just keep...
Or fingerprint kit.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt this is getting a curse token across the board.
Yeah, without question. It's like the other thing too is that you can plan your turn around it. It's not like you have to do it at the beginning of your turn. So it's like, say you're at a location with 3 clues, you discover 2 with your first 2 actions, then you use the Eon chart, then investigate and move, and then you still have another action. You know, so it's like it's totally flexible in when you use it as well. It is worth noting that you can't do the same action twice, I believe, from the way it's worded, because it says choose to take 2.
That is kind of up for debate to be precise. I think it is. You have to choose two of the above, not.
You gotta give this ridiculous card some mild restriction, right?
I know. Well, once you start power gaming, it's hard to stop.
Yeah, I know, it's so true. Yeah, this card's so dumb.
I did see a lot of Aeon Chart being played during the Horrors Without Borders fundraiser that Great Old Ones Gaming did recently. Very popular choice. I think the reasons are pretty obvious if you've been even playing this game even a little bit. Extra actions are good. 2 extra actions a turn is better. And then you start getting into crazy scenarios where you're adding secrets and or recurring this thing with various abilities, which with cards like Versatile are now available to pretty much any class in the game. This thing can get pretty silly pretty quickly. I suspect if something like Ace in the Hole got tabooed to prevent it from triggering more than once a turn and then removing itself from the game afterwards, that this thing will soon follow. Especially, I mean, Pendant of the Queen got tabooed as well for basically allowing you to do similar stuff. So I suspect this one will follow those. And
I don't see a world where quick thinking is tabooed, and this is like I just don't see why that would be. Yeah,
you can combine quick thinking with this card. You can
of course.
investigate your move and then quick thinking. And
I think someone at FFG really likes Monterey Jack. Like really likes Monterey Jack.
That brings us to Janae Beauregard, Intrepid Explorer. She's a 5-cost asset that costs 3 experience points. Intellect and Agility skill icons, Ally and Wayfarer trait. You get +1 Intellect and +1 Agility. As a response during your turn, after you move to a location, exhaust Janae Beauregard. Move a clue or a non-elite enemy from a connecting location to your location or vice versa. Janae has 2 health, 2 sanity, and takes up an ally slot. What do we think about Janae?
if you wanted more ways to combo with Eon Chart, here you go. This card is quite good. Quite good. I think the first comparison that probably comes to most people's minds is Lola Santiago.
Yeah.
And while Lola does cost 3, her ability requires you to constantly spend resources to get additional benefit out of. Whereas with Janae, that is not the case. You can move clues and move enemies for free. So being able to move enemies seems really good. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, like if she was just move a clue, like they could stop there. I mean, she would have to cost less than 5 at that point, but if it was just move clues around, that would be fine. Yeah, just like moving enemies around, that just opens up a can of worms. It's like, how does that work?
Because now you can like move into a location before the Guardian does and like shove the enemy back to the Guardian's location and then investigate freely.
Yeah. Let's say that you're like solo or something or 2-player. You just ignore non-hunters.
Yeah, entirely.
I'm going to mention this because I know Matt will eventually, is that, using this to reposition enemies just sets up Dynamite Blast.
Oh yeah. I mean I thought the viewers know that by now.
Yeah, I was initially kind of scratching my head about this one initially, but then, the more you think about it, the more uses you find for Janae. I mean, even if it was just moving clues around, that is a pretty powerful ability because you can, say, move clues around so you can set up a deduction 2, so you can grab lots of clues. You can move clues to better locations with more amenable shroud values. You can move clues off of victory point locations so you can score VPs. Moving enemies around, again, if you can somehow disengage from those enemies or just throw those enemies away so you never have to face them, that's really good. Janae can take a punch because she's got 2 health and 2 sanity, so she's not going to necessarily go down to ally hate immediately. Really, the only issue with her is she costs 5, but I think you're getting so much value out of that 5 that you'll gladly pay that and then use her.
So you really disengage from enemies when you use her?
No, I think you can use her to disengage from an enemy when you move. Like if you somehow can move to a location, say I think maybe shortcut works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I shortcut into a location. You have moved to a location, so then you can trigger Janae's response, and because that enemy that you brought with you is now at that location, you can disengage from that enemy and kick it back to another location.
Yikes.
Is my understanding of how that works.
So it's like you get I'm just thinking about like what this kind of compares to. It's like a cat burglar that doesn't cost actions to use in that in that case.
Or like a stealth or something like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty nuts, if that's the case.
Yeah, it's like a fast cat burglar.
Well, it like really trivializes hunter enemies a lot of the time. You know, because like you're moving, you're shoving in a location back, and then you're probably investigating and moving on.
Yeah, it's basically like you're going to try to outrace the scenario. Especially a lot of some of the early campaigns that are like they're kind of structured like hallways, where you visit a location once and you never go back to it. Then you just kind of like move the enemies behind. I admit I really like the moving clues around. I think that's something we don't see enough of, and I think I like that as design. The idea of like Seekers being able to like manipulate Shroud to get things done, because she doesn't actually discover any clues for you. You just move clues around in order to like help yourself discover them. Yeah, which I think is kind of interesting. But moving enemies around, I'm like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right with me, guys. It doesn't sit right.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I would say about this is that typically there aren't that many, like, I have trouble imagining scenarios where there are enemies at locations that you haven't already been to. Again, because enemies tend to spawn on you and not at locations that just happen to be in front of you. So I don't know how often you would be triggering that ability. Like you said, Matt, there are quite a few scenarios that are structured like hallways, like Doom of Etsley, obviously, where I think if you were heading back to the entrance with this, Janae is quite relevant because chances are you're going to run into a non-elite enemy. You move into that location, then kick the enemy back behind you, and you know, you keep on trucking. You've saved yourself an evade. You can just keep on moving without having to stop, which is pretty nice. But in most scenarios, enemies are either on you or behind you already. So I don't know how often the whole enemy thing. I guess it's might be nice if you've got a non-elite that is worth a VP, and the group wants to keep moving, and so the Seeker can pull, or the Rogue, I guess in this case, can pull that enemy along, so the Guardian has more time to kill it. So I think there's a lot. I think this is one of those cards where you're going to discover lots of interesting ways to use her ability that aren't readily apparent from just reading the card text. How would we rate this one?
I'm going to give this a pretty solid +1. I think it's pretty appropriately costed for what it does, especially when you're comparing it to something like Lola Santiago. I think this is a very good parallel to that card.
Yeah, sitting here tossing it around in my head, I'm just not sure how disrupting the moving enemies around thing it really is yet. So I'm going to give it a +1 with the asterisk saying use responsibly. Don't overuse the moving non-elite enemies.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a +1 as well. Again, this one tickles that itch I have for playing before the Black Throne and being able to keep moving and pulling clues along with me. That's really nice. And especially if you're playing in solo and you're at those locations where you run into a lot of locations that only have one clue on them, and you've got deduction in your hands, so you can just pull those clues along, have one really efficient investigate rather than doing a bunch of sort of inefficient investigates and have that deduction waiting.
So you know what synergizes with it? Pocket Telescope.
Boom.
So Pocket Telescope is playable with all of the cards in the Seeker.
It's almost as if someone was designing a whole card pool for Monterey Jack and just threw it all in there.
I guess that is something worth mentioning, is that while the Guardian Rogue cards don't seem to belong to any of the investigators in this box. The Secret Rogue cards definitely play nice with Monterey.
Bob Jenkins, not as much. Although Bob Jenkins' Eon Chart, oh god, he gets scavenging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nope, not gonna go there. No more talking.
That's going to do it for our look at the Seeker and Rogue cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion. Let us know in the comments down below what you think of Eon Chart. Have you had a good experience with it? Are you abusing this card to high heaven? Let us know. Any final thoughts? Seekers.
Yeah.
Man.
Seekers.
They get some good cards, those Seekers.
They sure do.
I will say that this is a nice coherent package of 4 cards of various XP points. So like kudos on the designers for designing a nice coherent package of cards that synergize with each other. Like Monterey Jack has got his card pool worked out for him just right out of the box here. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, and they're also pretty good in Bob as well. You know, Bob likes items, which is nice. Bob also can use Genet pretty well, I think. You know, he can get pretty decent value out of that +1 intellect. You know, he's not going to be using that reaction ability so much, but you know, he might like it. But
yeah,
I mean, Eon Chart is annoying. This card is just, I don't like it existing in the game, but it is what it is. And Pocket Telescope actually has me interested to build decks around.
Yeah, it's useful. I like it.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your other sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.